Have you noticed how certain people have a magnetic presence that transforms the environment around them without pronouncing a single word? They don't scream, do not implore, simply collect themselves, and suddenly, everything transforms. The atmosphere changes. People begin to question, seek, to feel. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped reacting instantly to each situation, if you chose the silence instead of the automatic response, the collection instead of the explosion, what do you think would happen? That's where the key resides. When you are always emotionally available, physically, psychologically, the world around you collapses because people were used to controlling you through your reactions, your impulses, your predictability. But the day you choose to withdraw, the game changes completely. And those who thought to meet you realize that they know absolutely nothing about you. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "What are you talking so loudly that I can't hear what you are saying?" Reflect on this. When you become inaccessible, who really goes into despair? Who gets annoyed? Who tries to provoke you just to arouse any emotion back? This reveals much more about the other than about you, and mainly reveals how much you are still being manipulated without realizing it. You continue to surrender to please, to maintain peace, so as not to lose people who were never really by your side. And with each forced sim, every immediate response, every emotional reaction, you donate a piece of your vital energy. And at the end of the day, what is left? Tiredness, frustration, a void you can't explain. But I will tell you why, because you are too available to those who do not deserve a minute of your silence. This video is not about turning the back on the world. It's about choosing yourself. It is about learning what Emerson called confidence, the process of becoming independent, authentic, complete. And this process begins when you understand that silence can be more powerful than 1,000 arguments. That recollection, when it comes from consciousness and not from the escape, is an act of supreme power. So I ask you now, looking into your eyes, how long will you continue to be controlled by the emotions of others? How long will you react like a puppet every time someone pokes your wound? Perhaps it is time to cut these strings, to withdraw, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. You were taught to always be present, to respond quickly, to please, to say yes even when I wanted to say no. Since childhood, it has been conditioned to believe that its value is how available you are to others. But here is a truth that maybe no one has told you with this clarity. This excessive availability is not a virtue, it is a prison. And as long as you keep thinking that you need to be accessible all the time, emotional or otherwise, you will be manipulated, drained and forgotten as soon as you are no longer useful. Do you know why? Because being always available makes you predictable. And everything that is predictable becomes a tool. People start using you as an emotional emergency button. They squeeze when they want attention, relief, validation, and then put you back on the shelf. But you don't realize this because you are stuck in an illusion that being present for everyone will make someone present for you. But it doesn't work like that. Emerson talked about social compliance. This mask we dress to be accepted, beloved, recognized. And it is exactly this mask that keeps you excessively available. You say it's okay when you are choking, responds immediately even when it is exhausted. It is explained. It is justified. It defends itself as if it should be something to the world. But the truth is that the more you put yourself in the center of the stage of others, the more you disappear from your own. Being available all the time is a subtle form of self. It is a disguised way of seeking approval, avoiding rejection, trying to control the image others have of you. But this control has a price, and the price is your peace. It is its vital energy being distributed as if it were infinite, when it is actually limited, very limited. People who want you available all the time actually don't want you. They want what you provide: validation, company, distraction, emotional comfort. But when you change, when you set a limit, when you refuse to react, these same people get angry. They accuse you, say you are weird. It's not because you have changed. It's because you have stopped being functional for them. And here is the most cruel point. The more available you are, the less value the others give you. Because what is too abundant becomes emotionally disposable. No one respects what they don't have to achieve. No one values what is always there. So now stop and think, who really deserves your time? Who deserves your attention, your presence, your listening? Or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before answering this, we need to understand an essential thing. Why do we react so much? Why do we give so easily? What is behind this almost automatic desire to answer, justify, and please? The answer is what Emerson called vital energy. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next part. Because your energy is all you have. And if you do not learn to protect it, someone will use it against you. Ralph Waldo Emerson did not see the human being as an automatic machine that reacts to stimuli without consequences. For him, our mind is like an energy system, and every thought, emotion, and action consumes a part of this energy. The question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or is letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you are wasting vital energy. When you defend yourself from a criticism that didn't even deserve attention, when it responds to a provocation just to prove it right, when you get involved in useless discussions, when you try to please those who do not value you, you are spending your inner strength in what does not nourish you. And Emerson was clear, what you resist persists. The more you react, the more it holds. People who live emotionally exhausted are not weak, they are poorly directed. And do you know what happens to someone who lives exhausted? It is vulnerable, and when you are vulnerable, it becomes easy prey. Manipulating people, opportunistic and needy emotionally, can feel it. They realize that you do not know how to keep your energy, that it reacts to everything, that you are always trying to solve the world and take advantage of it. Emerson said that a healthy mind is one who knows how to keep energy within the system. This means knowing how to say no fault, knowing how to remain silent without feeling coward, knowing how to act before acting, because true power is not in reacting. It's to choose when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses. How many times have you lost sleep because of a poorly resolved conversation? How many times have spent hours ruminating about what you should have said, or trying to understand why someone treated you badly? This is energy being drained without return. You are keeping live ghosts that should have died for a long time, and feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on responding. Vital energy is like a force field. When well kept, it creates presence. You enter an environment and command respect without saying a word. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world has no mercy on those who give in easily. Therefore, begin to observe your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose the center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that's where you need to work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to be sovereign over yourself. And here comes one of Emerson's greatest revelations. When you keep your energy, you break the projections others make about you. And it bothers you a lot, because now we are entering a dark territory, that of silent manipulation. In the next part, we will explore how opportunistic people feed on their energy and why their unavailability completely disarms these games. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who have always drained you without you realize. You think you are in control. He believes his reactions are conscious choices, but the truth is darker. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and whoever understands it manipulates you easily. Opportunistic people do not need to scream, threaten, or force situations. They just drive the buttons you have left, and you always react. Emerson talked about social influence, the psychological mechanism through which people shape each other without realizing it. But there is another side of this phenomenon that few notice. While others influence you, you also become a receptacle for these influences. And the more emotionally available you are, the more it becomes a blank screen for these projections. Do you know that friend who only appears when it is in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day? That person who praises you, but only while you are useful to her? None of this is by chance. They are not relating to you. They are relating to the idea of you, to the role you agree to play. And why do you agree? Because you are afraid of disappointing, fear of not being loved, fear of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation does not happen on the screen. It happens in the silence of guilt. When you feel you owe something to each other, when you believe you need to be available, you need to help, you need to understand, even when it destroys you inside. And here is the center point. The manipulator doesn't have to control you. He just needs you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you begin to say no, to respond with silence, to withdraw instead of explaining yourself, projections begin to collapse. The mask they put on you fall, and that makes people disconcerted because they no longer know who you are. And worse, now they are forced to look at themselves, and not everyone is prepared for it. Its unavailability is a threat because it forces others to confront their own void. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. It's not because you're wrong, but because you have stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Emerson said, "What we are communicates much more eloquently than anything we can say." When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the shadow of the other begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an exhaust. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to support the silence that comes after the break? Because it is exactly in this silence that a new kind of power is born. And that's what we're going to talk about now. In the next part, you will understand why silence can be the devastating weapon of the human psyche and how it completely changes the dynamics between you and the world. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard. He wants to respond quickly. He wants to overcome useless debates and prove his point, even if it costs his own peace. But there is a power that few know and even less dominate, the power of silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that is not absence but amplified presence. Emerson saw silence not as empty, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And observing sees patterns that once went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, handling games, auto-sabotage cycles. Silence allows lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When is not explained? When do you simply disappear? It is not because they miss you. It is because your silence takes from them narrative control. While you talk, it's still in the game. But when you shut up, the rules changes. And this destabilizes anyone who nourishes its reaction. True silence is not a lack of voice. It is domain over energy itself. It is the refusal to be dragged on the emotions of others. It is the conscious choice of not getting involved in battles that are not worth your wear. Emerson said that self-confidence, the process of becoming who you really are, requires this distancing. Because only in silence can you listen to yourself, without the interference of the world. But don't be fooled. Silence has a price. He will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through your own projections. It will make you look cold, distant, arrogant, but all this is reaction to those who never wanted to deal with their depth, only their usefulness. And here is the hard truth. The more you mature, the more selective it becomes with your words, because it understands that each sentence is an energy investment, and not everyone deserves access to its truth. Sometimes silence is not taken, it is sovereignty. It is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because the other forces the other to deal with his own thoughts, with his own inner noise. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could reveal. You do not need to explain your absence. She explains herself alone, and who feels threatened by her reveals how much she depended on her imbalance to maintain her own control. But the most powerful silence is not what disturbs the other. It is the silence that rebuilds you inside. The silence that connects you with something beyond external approval. It is in this internal space, free from the demands of others, that you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with its essence. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next part. Because it is not enough just to cut the external noise. You need to relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it goes, where it is, and especially where it should never be wasted. It's time to learn to be selective with your own soul. It's no use understanding all this intellectually if in practice you keep saying yes when it means no, answering messages that bother you, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that only exist for inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-sprite. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective, and that requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It is about no longer accessible to anyone, anytime, for any reason. It is about taking control of their own energy, time, peace itself. And that starts with small actions. Not respond immediately. Breathe before reacting. Out of a discussion before being dragged into chaos. Hit the phone without fault. saying not today, saying I don't care, say I won't get involved. But here is the most important part. You don't have to justify your absence. No need to explain your silence. It owes nothing to anyone but yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable, because when you refuse to explain yourself, it takes away the power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, understanding, affordable. Emerson understood that every process of self-confidence goes through isolation, but not depressed isolation, sacred isolation, a time of inner recollection where you revoke to listen to your own voice without the interference of the world, where you rebuild your identity, not based on the eyes of others, but from your own center. Want to know a good thermometer of your evolution? Note who starts to distance yourself from you when you get more reserved. Note who tries to tease you when you stop reacting. Notice who accuses you of changing when finally begins to protect themselves. These are not signs that you are wrong. These are evidence that it began to break free. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilty. You will think you are being selfish. You will hear that it is being too hard. But this is part of the process of deconstruction. You spent your life being conditioned to put yourself in second place. It is natural for change to cause discomfort, not only in you, but in everyone who benefited from your old version. Conscious unavailability is the basis of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. When you leave from a toxic environment, you are reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when it stops being explained, it begins to be respected, even if it is a few. But not everyone is prepared for this kind of presence, because their emotional absence will expose wounds that they don't want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on their emotional chaos to feel in control. And this is when the rupture comes. And with the rupture comes pain, loneliness, strangeness, the feeling that you are losing something when you are actually just freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the distance? What is born from silence? In the last part, let's talk about it. About the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. It is time to understand why the loneliness of the strong is the way to true freedom. When you stop being available to everyone, something deep starts to happen. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you're being too hard, if you're losing people who liked you. But gradually this silence transforms. It begins to clean, calm, heal. And then comes the loneliness, but not the loneliness of absence. It is the loneliness of the total presence, its own. The loneliness of the strong, the loneliness of those who no longer cheat on to keep others around. And in this space where there was confusion before, clarity comes in. Where before there was anxiety, peace enters. Where before there was a shortage, a new kind of force comes in, the power to be whole within itself. Emerson said that the process of self-confidence, of becoming who you really are, requires you to distance yourself from the collective, to identify yourself from the mask, to walk alone for a while. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to become unavailable. It is not running away from the world. It is returning to yourself. This is where you stop being a reagent and become a creator. It is no longer shaped by circumstances and begins to shape its reality from the inside out. People who feel uncomfortable with their absence, they reveal they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. And now that you don't fit anymore, you don't know what to do with you. And that is liberating. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. Will distance yourself from places, but it will reconnect with its essence. Will become misunderstood, but finally it will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, it becomes valuable, rare, unforgettable. And make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. The beginning of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mental games, for empty disguised of affection. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. And if you have gotten here, it's because a part of you is ready for this new path. A part of you already understood that being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself. And that true self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs it is alone for a while.